Phil?
Whether it's coming or not. But we can probably get started either way.
Okay. Okay. With that, we'll start, and Phil can join us. It's 5:33. Thanks everyone for joining us. I'll call the meeting to order, and we're not meeting in person, but I'd like to recognize that we are meeting electronically, and we're still on recognizing that we're on Mi'kmaq territory and that we're all treaty people, and we should continue working on that and recognizing it as we move forward as a community. We would appoint a meeting secretary. Let's see now. Katrina? Okay. Who may it be? Win prize. Declaration of conflict of interest, if there are any, if you see by looking at the agenda, is there any declaration of conflict? Going once, twice, three times? Okay. I guess you can show the minutes. There are none declared. Review and approval of the agenda. So Katrina, thank you for sending out the agenda. We have it in front. Anybody would like to add anything to it? Okay, I guess we'll go with that. Thank you. Minutes of November the 18th. Everyone had a chance to read them? And it looked good. Well done, yes. Katrina, again. You really do great minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's really well put together. Can we have a motion to approve the minutes of November the 18th? You win a prize.
Thanks, Megan.
Okay. Megan. Oh, no, everybody's put their hands up. There's prizes to be had. All in favor? Show of hands. Okay, motion carried. Review the actions. Wow. Community conversations. Before you go ahead, Megan, I attended two of the four or three. There's three? Four? Okay, so I attended two of them, and I was really impressed by the caliber of people speaking, by Megan, the way you were hosting it. Jackie was helping me in one of the groups. I was just, wow, this is a really, it was a great activity, really well organized. So kudos to folks who organized it. It was great to be a part of it. So Meg, if you want to give us a synopsis or an overview of what happened.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. That's very kind. Yeah, I think overall, I would say it's a success for the Food Council. I think that it's something that a piece of work that I'm really proud of, and I think that we all should be as well. And I'm mostly relieved that it's done and we don't have to talk about this anymore, since we've been talking about it since January, but December, maybe even. I don't know. But I think it was sort of a silver lining. Jackie and I talked about how it was unfortunate that the in-person series was canceled, but I think that we actually got more impact and rich discussions out of the way that we did this. I first want to thank everyone who volunteered to be moderators. That was a massive help for us. We really did need that support, so that was great for those of you who stepped up, and thank you for those of you who did attend the conversations. I don't think, if you weren't able to attend all of them or any, then I would really suggest that you watch the recordings later, because there will be some important things that we need to take away as a council moving forward. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've kept emphasizing through all the sessions, was that this isn't a first step, or this isn't a first step. It is the first step. It's not a solution. And it's by no means going to change anything in our food system, but it's about starting to have those conversations. And I think that it provided a platform for some people that don't typically have a platform to raise some of the issues or strengths that they see in our food system. And it also gave the opportunity just for participants to reflect on some of those things that I think is really important. And I think that's our responsibility as the Food Council. So I think in the new year and when we do our strategic planning, we really need to think about how those issues are reflected in the work that we do and how we're actually, this isn't sort of like, I think that's one of the things that we've been talking about in circles for the last year, 2 years is project ideas, but what is it connected to? And so this cannot be a standalone project. A lot of time and energy was put into this. I can't say that enough. So just that it can't be a standalone project, that there needs to be some follow-up on that. So some of you might be interested or focused on metrics. And I understand that all of you have busy schedules, so it's all good that if you weren't able to participate, but again, just would suggest watching them later, or you can ask me any questions too. So on average, I think we ended up having 20 to 30 participants. I think on average it was 20, our highest turnout being 28, not including the panelists and sort of like all the tech controller computers and things like that. So not bad at all. I'm cognizant of the fact that people are pretty webinared out, I think. I think that we didn't get the outcome of my worst nightmare, just like 2 or 5 people. So that's wonderful. And I know we didn't reach 50 or 100 or more. We did have the capacity for that though. So we did have the Zoom capacity and we, planned accordingly and we were keeping an eye on registration. So we would have been able to handle something like that if needed. But yeah, I think that it was a reasonable turnout for something like that, especially in Charlottetown. If you saw the schedule, you'll notice that Jackie and I really worked to make sure that it was different, different days of the week and different times, really to account for the fact that people have different schedules and, thinking about all the people within our food supply chain and how their schedules may differ as well. Not to mention citizens and, maybe policymakers and people like that, the non-traditional food sectors that we wanted to rope in too. So we really were cognizant of that. And I think that was helpful. I think we saw spikes in registrations once the promotions went out on the city page. So really big kudos to Katrina and the city staff because the promotions were really, really awesome. And I know Jackie did a lot of legwork for that too, getting photos and bios and doing some of the graphics. But I think that went a long way as well. So really thankful for the city for stepping up there for promoting in that way. And I think the most important highlight for the series was that the conversations were well received from my perspective. It wasn't until the final session that I had someone direct messaging me like concerned, but I didn't hear any negative feedback, and the small percentage of evaluation surveys we've received so far have been really positive as well, just so you know. And I think overall, as I said, the conversations were impactful. And it's sort of how we carry them on from here. I'm really proud of the panelists that we had. That took a lot of work to sort of persuade some people to participate or give them the confidence to participate. But I think that that's one of the things I'm most proud of were the themes and the panelists who participated. Some people did say no, and that was sort of hard to take, but it's okay. And hopefully this is sort of, people can sort of see, oh, this is the Food Council, this is what they're doing. So it can only go up from here. I think that overall the tech was great. And I think that it was because we had the tech support. And I just want to emphasize that because I know that that was part of our budget used for tech support. But I think I would have been in tears for 3 weeks if we didn't have that. And it was just so helpful because during the hour session, I had no time at all to sort of I barely looked in the chat box most of the time because I was sort of engaging and I couldn't just like ask the question and then go and talk to John sitting next to me, because I had to build on what they were saying and hear them. And I wanted to hear what they had to say too as a participant. So I was sort of engrossed, and by having the tech support and Jackie as additional background support, I think that goes a long way. So just if there were future opportunities, I think having tech support is critical. We only had tech issues. If anyone attended all four, you would have seen that like basically they got better and better and better and better. The first one, basically every tech issue that we could have had, except for Zoom crashing, every other issue possible, I think happened. That's okay. I think we got those resolved and it worked out, and we sort of just simplified it a little bit more too. A lot of people do like interactive tools, but recognizing that just comes with more risk, and that's okay. And I think that from there it was sort of smooth sailing, and we knew that the first one was going to be sort of our like test run and see how it went. But I think after that everything was relatively smooth. So yeah, I'm just going through my notes here. Yeah, so successes overall, conversations were had, which was a goal. We did talk about the food asset map. That was a goal, coming back to the original objectives. One of the other original objectives was social connection, and I think that was like brought up in a bit of the ways the themes were talked about, but also just having people in the breakout sessions. And I think they were impactful conversations. Like every breakout room that I was a part of was awesome. Every interview session was amazing. I went overtime pretty much every single time because I didn't want to stop the conversations. And I think that just goes to show how impactful some of the things that the panelists were saying were. And I think that it's also important to recognize the connections we as a council have now made with these panelists. They're food assets in our community. And so how can we keep building that momentum? And then the tech support, I know that I mentioned, but that was a success. Some of the challenges were, I think that the promotions, like among networks, we did like the best from the city. And I know that Pauline Howard on the Food Exchange page promoted so much. Like she was basically, it seemed like she was working for us sometimes, the amount she was promoting. And I know I don't have you all on your personal accounts, but it goes a long way if we're able to share it and just say, like, even posting it on your stories saying like, hey, tune into this. I know that Stephanie McQuaid, she even did that the day of her session, and Tara Reeves did as well, Claire. So sort of promoting it on your own socials, if you're comfortable doing that. Otherwise, distributing. I know that we all wear different hats, and so just getting the word out more. And on that note, I don't want to forget, Jackie did want me to mention that the overall food questionnaire, and I just have a few more notes and then I'll stop rambling, and I want to hear from you all. But the food questionnaire that's open until December 18th, I think she mentioned that it's largely been completed by folks outside of Charlottetown, which may skew some of the results. And so if you could possibly distribute among your networks and just as a reminder saying like, hey, this is open, can you complete while it's still open? Just because, I mean, it's not bad to have that data at all, but we still want our residents complete. So I just didn't want to forget that. I think that something else to think about is that Jackie and John, they went way above and beyond their contracts. And I know that neither of them would say that. And I know that Jackie's completing a report, but just from working with them, the hours that they put in, massive amount of hours. Like I don't even think that they can tabulate them. And I'm just saying that because I feel like I have to relay that. I think that this was an awesome project, but thinking about in the future, if we were to say, oh, we need to do this series again, we'd have to really think about more engagement from all of us or a specific committee. I was using work hours, which was fine, but I'm not getting paid for that either. And, the hours that I put in leading up to that I didn't even end up counting, but up till like midnight, 1 a.m. working all weekend. So just, and I'm not saying that to be like, oh, thank you, Megan. I'm just saying it to be cognizant of future work. If we were to do this again, what that looks like. Yeah. And then the communications piece, just, I know that we used to have a communications committee, and it wasn't in Jackie's role because we used to have a communications committee, but a lot of that fell on her shoulders and a lot of that fell on Katrina's shoulders. So just recognizing that as a challenge that I saw as well. Otherwise, I think that I just wanted to mention next steps too. Like, we didn't reach everyone obviously because it was online, and also, you know, not huge numbers, but still a good turnout, reasonable for what this was. But thinking about how we can revisit reaching some of the other populations or service providers in the new year. And then again, how can we hold ourselves accountable both for the asset map and future actions and initiatives. So trying to embed some of those issues in our priorities for the strategic plan, for example, all those things. And then the last thing would be that Jackie is submitting a report for her work as the project manager on this. And that will, I think she's hoping to get that to us within the next weeks. So yeah, that's sort of my summary. If you guys have questions, I'm happy to ask them. I would also love to hear from you, for those who participated, what your thoughts were. I got some messages from some of you, which was really nice, and I appreciated that. But yeah, if that's okay with Katrina and Bernie, just maybe open the floor for a discussion on how you think it went.
I have a couple of questions. So like I'm really, the two sessions that I attended, I noticed that like the numbers of participants roughly seem to equal the amount of like staff or food council members sitting, like attending. So that's really great. It sounds like there's better participation in the other two. What did you, have you compiled any of the suggestions or the additions to the asset map? Like, do we feel like we've really done enough to validate it before release?
I think that's something that we need to talk about as a separate entity to this. I think so. This conversation series was a part of that validation, but because of moving online and shifting it in that way, we do have data and we do have information from that. But in looking at the map on its own, like even I took a lot of time to record like a snapshot that now lives on our Food Council webpage. And there's a feedback form on there too. So I would encourage, like, distribute that among your networks that they can go and provide feedback on there. But it's so limited, right? Because it's a 2-minute clip that I sort of just highlight some things. And I think that there are still a lot of things missing. I sort of chatted with Katrina after one of the sessions and I had some light bulbs going off. We've talked about local procurement and we've talked about restaurants and since I joined, there's never been a conversation about restaurants. I think it was just assumed that it was sort of growing and those kind of things. So there are a lot of things that I think we need to talk about. And I don't think that this conversation series checks the box off for us to publish and launch the map. And I think Katrina, you probably feel the same way. And there's still other components of the map that we need to revisit. So there's some work to do. I think we can get it done for early 2021, but I think it's like there definitely is some more work that we have to do. I think that I maybe thought we thought it was more final, but it really was sort of a few people that worked on a big list and some people that looked at it, but there's some gaps that do exist, and they're not gaps that exist in our system. They're just like on the map. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it definitely does. And I agree. And that's fantastic. And thank you for like kind of revisiting. I honestly, I'd kind of forgotten that we were trying to accomplish some other things in addition to that, like validating the map. So, and I agree. I think the panelists in particular were just amazing, like really, really, really good people and presenters. And you did an amazing job, like bringing it all together and helping people kind of tie back to the Food Council and what we can't do. That was really great. Thanks.
Thanks.
Like just a couple of comments. I participated in a couple as well, and I would echo the same as Morgan, that you know, a fairly large proportion of those that were participating were either from the or sort of associated directly with us. But I just wanted to, first of all, tell you, Megan, you're a very gifted facilitator. I'd really like that, because the thing I enjoyed most about the 2 sessions I participated in were the conversations. I ended up in some breakout rooms. I ended up in a breakout room on the first night, which of course was, we had those technical issues, so that was a challenge. But I felt that as a participant, that when we moved into the breakouts, we were removed from that conversation, and we had some really amazing people and a really gifted facilitator. I felt bad when I was moved away from that and into the breakout room. And, I think I'd like to really sort of understand how did we really benefit from that exercise in these. One of the things I noticed in the session that you did with Anne and Lisa was that there was a lot of there were quite a few comments that were coming in the chat box, and you were again really nicely incorporating those into the conversation, so that those of us that were watching and listening, excuse me, still felt included in the conversation. Really like that as well. I gotta go get a drink of water.
Yeah, go get a drink. Thanks, Karen. No, I appreciate that's very kind of you to say. And I think that on the note of the numbers, that's something that we noticed too. It was like largely Food Council members, and then like staff, which is fine. But it was sort of that next level. Like, I feel like we were working on the project, we like promoted and we did all those things. So that's sort of why I emphasized the communications and promotions as a challenge for the project overall, because we did reach groups through the city, but through the city Facebook event. But how does that go to, like, is it only that small bubble that's seeing it? How does it get out? And, Pauline's sharing it tons. She was sharing, I think, almost every event. But I definitely, that's a challenge for me coming out of it. And I think some of the other points that you made, I hope will come out more in Jackie's reports, and she and I are going to chat more. But we can keep those conversations going about how that works. And I think I felt a little bit the same way about the breakout session, and it was almost something that Jackie and I felt like we had to do. And I'm glad we did it, because some of the breakout sessions were awesome. But it was sort of our only way to validate the asset map without knowing how to approach it. We do now have the feedback form and a video on the page, but that sort of came as I was prepping for my presentation. I was like, I'm not going to go through and there's going to be so many tech things if I go in and out of the map while I'm presenting. So that portion only came about as I was prepping for the presentation. But now we have that. Thank you, Katrina, on the city website. So it's an additional opportunity to contribute. But I think that's why we really felt like we had to have the breakout rooms. But I agree. I felt like I wasn't a very good timekeeper as a facilitator, but I definitely didn't want to stop some of the conversations, in particular ones that were like really providing a space for people to talk. So yeah, I felt the same way.
And I really think you did a very fine job bringing it together, and bringing the conversation back to the council and our work.
Thanks. Well, thank you. Does any other thoughts? It's all good if no, but I just figured this will probably be our sort of last time talking about this series, other than maybe Jackie submitting her report.
Yeah,
I just wanted to reiterate what Morgan and Karen and Bernie already said, but you just did a fabulous job. And I think that the breakout rooms were good because I think I say I only attended one or participated, but it gave more people a chance to talk. So even though it wasn't, and it is recorded, so I think we'll capture more, even though it was a limited audience. But it was just super well done. So thank you so much for all that.
You guys are all very kind. I don't mean the open floor for compliments, but thank you. And I forgot to mention that all of the sessions are recorded, and the breakout sessions were all cloud recorded as well. So thanks, Colleen. Those breakout sessions will come up, and that was another reason why we did them, because everyone engages and interacts differently, and that's something that I really try to do in any session, is to make sure that whether it's drawing, like if we were in person, there would be opportunities for people to speak up or write or draw or just observe and contribute later. And it was different online, right? So some people speak up a little bit more when it's a smaller group, and so that was another reason for that too. But there's pros and cons to both.
Definitely, but I think you did a great job, like for as many different ways for people to participate as possible. So, and about your point, like with the recordings, we had such gorgeous promotions. Katrina, could we have like a wrap up one where kind of we can kind of promote that the recordings are available and maybe that the report's available or something like that? Because some people have asked for that for sure.
Yeah, of course we can. We've done a bit of a wrap-up post already with more of like the video and the survey. The recordings themselves, my understanding is that they need to be cleaned up and haven't been yet. Like it's a little bit complicated because of the breakout rooms. Like it's not just a consecutive video.
Yeah.
So I don't have my hands on those yet. I think that's something Jackie's working on. Am I correct in that, Megan?
Yeah, Jackie, John, and I were talking about that this week, and the files are pretty big, so I think we just need to get them uploaded somewhere, and then Jackie and I will probably go through them all and both sift out some of the data that's in there, but also figure out what to do with them. I certainly think that some of them could do with some editing, such as the first one, but
yeah. But we will get at some point, and it may not be quickly, but at some point they will live on the city YouTube page and website, and we can promote on social media, and that's no problem at all. Yeah.
That is a good segue, because the next item was next steps for the asset map. So thanks again, Megan, for all the work, and please relay to Jackie the council's appreciation for all the work she's done as well. You understand, thanks for letting us know the amount of work that's being put into this, knowing full well that maybe next time around we can look at properly paying people for the work that they do.
Well, and I think,
which is fair.
Yeah, I think because she's never said anything to me, but I've sort of, based on the hours she's been putting in, I think but it's something she's passionate about, and it was a project. She and I worked really, really well together. She's amazing at what she does, so it really wasn't an issue for her, but just keeping that in mind. And I guess also I'm thinking about like our own food council member engagement. If we were to do something again, it would probably require a full subcommittee to do something like that, because I don't think I personally would be willing to like embark on a full big thing again like this with just external contracts.
It's part of the reflection that we do after an event, which is good to discuss and keep track of, because all the council members here will be moving on after a year or two. So it's good to have in minutes to know that, hey, these activities take a lot of people's time, and we value that as a community. So it's good to know.
Yeah, And they don't have to take a lot of time, but to do them well, I think that's the difference. Like we could just do something and it's no problem, but to do them well, it does take the time and energy. But I will definitely tell Jackie that. I've expressed it to her many times, but I'll pass it. I know she knew that I was meeting with you guys tonight, so I'll let her know.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
So if there is no more questions regarding the community conversations, Katrina, do you want to do lead us in the next steps for the asset map?
Yeah, I think this is just sort of a starting of a conversation and sort of some thoughts that I've had. I think Megan talked about it a little bit already, and I think that her and I will, and Jackie potentially will continue to talk about that. I know Megan and I both have a lot of ideas. I think that's something that we share coming out of those community conversations. I was able to attend all of them, and I have more ideas than I know what to do with. I had a meeting with Ramona a few days after the last one, and I think she was like, "Oh my God, did this girl just drink an entire vat of coffee?" Because I was so excited about all the ideas that I had. But I think one of them was kind of what Megan touched on, and the need to continue to build that asset map, and not only to fill in the gaps, but also to do something with it. I think it's an amazing resource for the public and just for anybody in the food system, which is of course all of us. But I think it has so much more potential than that too. And kind of just through what you were talking about, Megan, though, I think we're maybe like a little bit further away from what I kind of wanted to bring up tonight. Like, I think obviously we need to kind of get the tool complete before we can do some of the things that I'm thinking of. But I guess I sort of wanted to put the bug in people's ear to think about what can be done with this. Like I just think a neighborhood analysis of the city would be amazing, and seeing where those gaps are, seeing where it needs attention, what neighborhoods, and there's so many different ways we can look at it. I think we could overlay the map with, data from Statistics Canada and other groups that collect information and collect some really interesting. I just feel we don't necessarily have as good of an understanding as we need of a neighborhood breakdown, and like even just in terms of like how do food security statistics kind of relate to some of the things we're seeing on the asset map. Anyway, the options are sort of endless. But like I say, I'm sort of realizing we need, I think, to really finish the map and get it launched before we can do this. But I would love for the Food Council to be involved as, like, obviously this is your project and started here, but at the same time, I guess keeping in mind too, like this might be a bigger task. And potentially something that could be absorbed into whether it's another, like whether say Jackie was interested in continuing some of that type of analysis work and we were to hire her again, or to be sort of back in the city for, I mean, I probably don't have the capacity to take it on right now, but we do have an intern coming on in the winter, which she's not exactly slated to be working on this type of thing, but is something that I could work into her work a little bit. And yeah, anyway, just all things to be thinking about. We can also, of course, keep it fully within the Food Council if everybody wants to bite those pieces off. But it's work I think needs to be done and may come out too in the strategic planning a little bit more. And once Jackie's report's ready and all of that. So yeah, there's kind of more a bug in people's ear, I think.
Any questions to Katrina? Or comments?
Just to throw another bug in people's ears, one of the things that I was reflecting on after the sessions was like holding ourselves accountable in some of these conversations. So we've got the sections of the tool right now, but if we could get it to a level where there's an expanded box where you click. Can you hear me okay? Oh, Katrina's face just told me otherwise. But if you like expand it on a box, and then there would be options like vegan, vegetarian options, but also like a list highlighting like Black, Indigenous, and racialized folk owned businesses, like as a list. That's a level of accountability that we can integrate into that map. It wouldn't necessarily be a new icon on the physical map, but something else. Katrina and I also were talking about, I know I already mentioned it, but restaurants, and if you could maybe especially older members, I just mean like who have been around for a little bit longer, um, since the council was created, to think about the restaurants. And something that I really could see that could be really exciting happening would be restaurants are not reflected on the map right now. And I think in some ways it makes sense, but in a lot of ways it's a disservice because a lot of them um, they procure locally, right? And therefore they're contributing to some of those local businesses. And so it ties into some of the work that Colleen and Katrina have talked about for local procurement. But in my head, there could be like another layer of the map that you click on, and it's the restaurants, and it's not part of the buy category because we want to promote buying from our producers and farmers. But it might be like sit in or take out, but there could be different tiers, like tier 1 being, they are the best at supporting local, and maybe like you want to eventually all restaurants to a tier 1. I know we don't like have coffee beans here in PEI, obviously. So, within reason, but it goes within why we need definitions of local food and what local for food procurement means. And so that's just something that there's a lot of light bulbs and wheels turning in my head, similar to Katrina, but those are some layers of the map that I think will take it to the next level. I think if we launched it right now and restaurants weren't on there, especially given this past year, there might be some backlash. So I don't know if that was an earlier conversation, not to drag that on, but just throwing that as a bug in people's ear, if that was a conversation that was previously had, or just sort of we decided to go ahead without because it's complicated. But those are.
Does anybody remember if a conversation was had around restaurants at the beginning of all of this?
There certainly was a conversation, and I have a feeling it was we were looking. I can't recall what I do. I recall there was a conversation. I'm sure what our rationale or our justification was for not including restaurants, but there was something. But I hear what you're saying, and I think not only around local sourcing, but we have. I think we identify that some of these places provide culturally appropriate food to specific populations within our city, and I think that's really important to recognize as well. And yeah, there's all kinds of elements. I think you're absolutely right that the restaurants should be included, and I think there's lots of reasons why we could have that conversation and why we should have that conversation to include them. So I hear you, and as I said, maybe Morgan, do you recall maybe why we? Because I do
I don't. I don't remember. I have a lot of thoughts that come to mind of including restaurants, and I love the idea of layers and like Karen said, especially addressing restaurants that are owned and run by people that perform other community services. It's going to be really difficult to identify, as an example, those that promote using local food. I know that when I worked with the school food system, that Chartwell's told everybody that they use all kinds of local food, and should French fries count? Should food purchased from processed food? There's just I totally agree that I think we would definitely need some valid some definitions, so that, because otherwise people use they throw around the word sustainability and local and things like that, but without a very clear kind of definition. A lot of people just use it for marketing and branding, but they really don't do it in practice. So as a food council, I just want to be aware of what we're promoting, I guess. And you're going to see a lot of restaurants use that because they're buzzwords right now. But I do agree. I think we should revisit. But it's a very I think it would be a very complicated thing, and maybe that's why we just left it alone at the beginning, because it would be very, very complicated.
Yeah, I think that
McDonald's
is.
probably buys PI eggs. I'm just going to throw that out there. They probably use PI eggs. So are they a food asset? I would argue they're
And I think
absolutely not.
that's exactly the conversation.
I think that was the conversation. Yeah. Yeah. Where do you draw the line? As you were talking though, I was thinking like if we talked about like local ownership and not franchise type things, as maybe that's a way of tiering it. Because that localness, I have localness written, but it's a tough one, but ownership is easier, maybe. Anyway,
Yeah,
giant
and
conversation.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Yeah.
And obviously we've had the conversation about local procurement already, but I really see some synergy there. And I think that combination of ownership and actually like maybe that's something we as a food council need to talk about is like that we sort of force people to take ownership. Is that our role, to force people to take ownership and reflect on what they, you know, purchase and supply? I don't know. But just I wanted to put the bug in people's ear as Katrina and I sort of take a look at some of the next steps before launching the map. And that's probably not something that would be ready if we were to launch it in early 2021, but maybe we do it as if you're a restaurant and want to be on this, then show, like maybe we have a form that people have to fill out if they're owning something to be on the map. If they're sort of at that restaurant, lots of conversations. I don't want to take more time than needs to because I feel like we could talk for hours on that, but I've been reflecting on that a lot lately. So
Thank you, Megan. I feel like my brain isn't fully, I feel like it's not firing with all cylinders tonight. And I feel like you added in a lot of stuff that I wanted to bring up. And one thing that whole conversation sort of triggered in my mind that I wanted to just sort of mention is that I feel like there's a lot of work to be done in terms of identifying those gaps within the map and filling them in. And it's perhaps not something that can fully ride on the Food Council at this point. And it's probably not something that can solely ride on Megan and myself as well. So as I said, there is some like new support coming on with the city, but I'm not sure. We're kind of in the process of laying out exactly what her work will be. So I did just want to say that I think it would be a good idea probably to get some external support on that. I don't know, unless somebody or a few people on the Food Council feel the desire to take that on. Obviously, Jackie's kind of an obvious choice to discuss that with. I have not, and in no way is she committed to that. Now you guys have some Food Council budget if you are interested in using it for that, but we also have some budget because of the way that this year's gone and the lack of events and stuff. The sustainability department as a whole has some extra budget to play around with. So potentially, I just sort of wanted to float that idea to everybody, get some thoughts. I'm going to take a report to our committee in a couple of weeks, just sort of as a wrap up to all of this. And I did want to include next steps and within that kind of reflect some thought as to how we're going to fill in those gaps on the map.
Yeah, I don't feel very comfortable. I don't personally feel very comfortable suggesting that we hire someone to do next steps when we don't really know what those next steps are.
Yeah, I just mean to fill in those gaps that we're talking about on the map, not to decide the next steps for the map.
Oh, so we'll be hiring someone to do that? What's the proposal? To hire them to do what?
To fill in the gaps on the map. So sort of to identify what those gaps in terms of categories and things like that would be, and to do sort of the research. So say, for example, Megan and I had talked to an intern with the province to do some research into like cold storage facilities and school food programs. That didn't really come to completion. So those are a couple of areas I feel like we've identified additional areas through the conversations themselves. And I feel like it will be quite a bit of work to fill in those gaps. Now, if this is something the Food Council feels as though they would like to do, that's certainly an option.
So we're going to let one person potentially decide what the gaps are.
Well, there will of course be room. Sorry?
And that's my initial reaction to, like, really, if we hire someone to start filling in the gaps, we should really be like hiring them to engage more of the community to decide what the gaps are. Like, something that I was thinking about during our conversation about restaurants is, like, maybe because we can't decide as a council, it needs to be decided by the community. Like, we really are still developing this asset map in the opposite way that normally it would be done. And so maybe we need to kind of sit back and say, a next step would be, we need more community involvement in this. That's definitely my.
Yeah, I think to weigh in, I feel like maybe I'm misinterpreting it, but I think Katrina's actually talking about maybe like 3 steps, like taking 3 steps back to what Morgan and Karen are talking about. I think we need to think about where the map goes for sure. Am I wrong in saying that? I think before we launch the tool, Katrina's talking about some of the gaps that, like, examples. Are we going to launch? Is the tool good as is to launch or no? And I think Katrina's saying because it isn't, we need to have people doing that work before it gets launched to the public. And then in the years to come, Food Council works with the community to fill, oh, there's not a market here, those kind of things. I think that's what you both are talking about there. Is that correct? Like the actual action that comes from the map? I think maybe the gaps that Katrina's talking about is that like restaurants aren't on the map right now, or should.
Yeah, that's what I'm. That's what I'm.
My question is,
who develops it, who creates it, and so far it's been, the Food Council, and now before it's launched, I think the biggest thing is that we need community input. Launch it without it. That's how I feel. I think that's the biggest gap.
But I a whole series to do that work.
I'm just wondering if we're trying to think about what are the gaps and what to do with them when we are waiting for that report. And I think the report should identify maybe some of those gaps that should help us to figure out what needs to be filled in. So it's maybe kind of for me, it feels like a bit of a premature discussion about that. And I'd be happy to have the conversation about who does it and how it does it, but we don't know what those conversations yielded quite yet. So that's my only concern.
It's like, yeah, I agree 100%, Colleen. And I further think that as part of our strategic planning, I think that maybe this might be a decision that we would make after we even complete our strategic planning exercise. Well, like I think that we're being asked to make a decision to hire someone to sort of complete this asset map, and I think we're in that place that we can make a decision yet. I don't have enough information to go to that.
And that's fine. My question for everyone is, do we want to launch? Because we've said that we're launching in the news. Are we launching this in early 2021?
Depends how you define early, but certainly not
right away.
I think we'd say.
I guess my biggest question to you, Megan, like maybe based on what you just told us about the community conversation, my understanding is that we need more feedback about the asset map before we launch it to the general public. And so maybe I misunderstood, and maybe after you go through, maybe you observe like a lot more interaction about the map in community conversations. Is that what you're saying? Because I just feel like I only attended 2 sessions, and only in 2 breakout sessions. So I think that's what Karen's saying, is that like we just don't. Is there enough information to that's what we're waiting for. I think we need to wait for the report to see if there's enough.
We absolutely can do. The other thing is, like, the tool is developed, like it lives as a map, and there's like outside of the restaurant conversation and these other categories that we're talking about, everything is there. There's a form that will be available for people to contribute to. So I guess I'm confused about what the task of the map is. And I felt like I thought the outset of this was to come out of this project with a food asset map, launch it, and it's fluid for community to continuously engage in. The gaps that are there on the map, Food Council works with the community, but it's never going to be comprehensive. It's never going to be final. And I think that's what Tina is asking about here, to like push it out to the public. There are a few little other things that will require some other work, but it's not about, oh, this neighborhood doesn't have this, let's solve that. That's part of strategic planning. I know what you guys are saying, and I'm just sort of trying to figure out the process here. I know that I sort of jumped in last year to the middle of this, but it really was just a spreadsheet that we've sort of propelled into what it is now. And I'm really proud of the work that it has gone into it. And I would just hate to see it sort of sit still. And
it's not going to sit still. I guarantee you. We've all had so much input, and it's going on for a long time. But I'm very reluctant to hire someone to do work that I don't know what they're doing. But I think that we need to see this report, as Colleen said, before we can make any decision in terms of what our next. And so once the council receives that, then I think that we can make that decision. I mean, we have to be accountable as well for the money that we spend. And, we had to rationalize and justify a strategic planning session. So I think that we need to be able to rationalize and justify why we would be hiring someone else to do the work that we do through this community conversation. So I would rather see the result, no matter what those gaps are, very clearly, and then we can make that decision and develop a work plan for, a contractor, for a subcommittee to undertake to do this.
I just want to weigh in. I'm not going to talk about it anymore, but just coming back to the objectives of the conversations, I just want to reiterate those for the record, that they were, 1, to have conversations about our local food system, 2, to bring people together with their neighbors, with people in the food supply chain, and 3, to validate the food asset map. So just so that we're clear that the conversations was a part of this work, but it wasn't sort of checkbox for it.
A lot of conversation around this food asset map. It's we come and go, and I think we've got a lot vested into this. I was one of the comments you made, Megan, about the questionnaire was filled mainly by people outside of Charlottetown. So how do we engage Charlottonians because it's their asset map? So what everybody is saying, I echo that. If we get that report back to see what the gaps were, and if we all agree after the fact that we can put the map live, that's how we're going to get maybe some of those involvement. People will look at the map once it's up and say, wait a minute, this is missing, that is missing. Yeah, we didn't get everything, and that's how it's, because it's living. It's a living thing. And I forget who said it. I think everybody said it, that it's fluid. It's never going to get full. We can't sit on it forever. I think the community conversation did try, and we let the community know. Unfortunately, we didn't have a lot of community members participate. So maybe once we put it live in early 21, which could be, like Colleen said, it might not be January, but it could be February. Once we get the report, we work on things. And then it goes live, and then we'll get a flood. I'm pretty sure we'll get a flood of people saying you missed this and that. And then we'll look at those as we go. I don't know if we want to have a motion about, do we wait until we get the report before we say yes to going live? Would that be fair as a step going forward? Or is any other ideas from the council as to move forward to get this? I'd like to see that we are committed with the.
I think we need to see the report.
Yes, yeah, wait for the report.
I think we need to see the report.
See the report?
I think then we can make an informed decision.
Okay. So Karen, motion to see the report before we go live?
But I think, do we need a motion for that? I think we can just,
Okay, I want to make sure that we don't sit on it again and it keeps not going anywhere because we forget or we add something else to it.
sure. You want a motion?
But I like motions because then it doesn't get forgotten. It goes on the minutes and then it's in the agenda the next time. No?
I agree.
Okay. I don't want to make the motion.
I
I don't
think,
know if I can make the motion as chair.
Karen had made the motion.
yeah.
Well, no, I just said, Karen, do you want to make the motion? But
Oh,
I volunteered her.
you're on mute, Karen.
Yeah, no, I don't want to make a motion. Motions are, anyway, no, I don't want to.
Yep.
Okay, well, if somebody wants to make a motion, why don't I just put it in as an action item, Bernie? And
Yep.
does that sound okay?
As long as it's in there somewheres. I don't want to forget about it because we keep forgetting or we add things on top of other things and then we don't move ahead. This would be nice in January or February to see it go live. We're not going to get everything on it. It's impossible. It's unrealistic. So I think we're good with the next steps. Katrina?
Yep.
Okay. Strategic planning, Karen. Did we get a third or maybe that third person didn't?
Yeah, we did. From
Okay.
Insight, it came in at about 5,000. Volume 18 came with the lowest bid, so we will be we can make a decision, like make a motion to proceed with hiring volume 18 to guide us through our strategic planning session. So that will be my motion.
Do we have a seconder?
I can second.
I'll second.
Any questions? Okay, Megan, a second. Do we have questions about the motion or before we approve or vote on it? No? Okay. So all in favor?
All right.
Hands, yeah. Okay, anyone against? Okay, motion carried, all in favor. What would be the next step for this one? So now we found someone to do a strategic plan. Do we, I'll open it up to the council, like, how do we want to proceed?
I'd suggest that we get in touch with volume 18 and find out what dates they would have available in the new year. I have in my request for their quote, I suggest it would be a half-day session. So that's the other thing. I guess we'd have to sort of poll the council as well and find out what half-day would be, best for as well. So I think those are the two things that need to happen. Is we'd have to poll the food council and then check in with volume 18 and see when they have availability to meet with us and work with us.
Bernie, you're on mute.
Yep, I'm talking to myself. Karen, do you want to reach out since you started the ball rolling with volume 18 to see what dates they'd be able to do this?
Sure. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I can with them and I mean, I can do a doodle poll with this group as well, if that's what you'd like to find out. And I mean, is it something we'd like to do in January?
I think the sooner the better. And
January.
Yeah.
for me.
I'll check with volume 18 and find out when they have available.
Okay. And is it something that they will get in touch with the council asking what we're looking for specifically for a strategic plan? Like I know some folks just do like a 1 year out, a 3 year out. Are we giving them parameters and guidelines as to what we're looking for the strategic plan? Did we discuss that?
I don't know.
Like
I basically, when I spoke to the big contractors, I basically provided the food charter, some of documents that we had with relation to sort of where I read. Yeah, and that's when, that's how they provided their pricing and their feedback to me. So, yeah, I haven't really.
Karen, are you going to meet
Conversation with volume 18 and see what, I'll be talking with them. So, what is it that I need to talk to them about?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Karen, do you maybe want a couple, like form a little subgroup as like a, can people hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Like a subgroup as prep for that session, just so that everybody's on the same page, so you don't feel like you have to do it all alone, Karen. Maybe like one or two other people helping you out with that. So that volume 18 is in the know going into the session or plural sessions on what our goals and values and objectives are. Would that be helpful?
Yeah. I think that'd be very helpful. I would welcome that.
I'd be happy to work with you, Karen, on some of that.
Thanks.
Help with that too.
I mean,
Yeah.
it feels I can't do it myself. Doesn't feel.
Yeah, it feels like you're having to like do the mind mapping for the whole cast to go into that. So yeah. Thanks, Colleen and Morgan and Karen.
Guys, thank you.
well, thanks. Now we have a little committee to work on the strategic planning. I think for many strategic planning, I recall I know the organization would get in touch with the body and ask questions of everybody to see if everybody's on the same page. And I guess it depends on who we hire. So it's good to have a little committee to work on that because, yeah, it'd be unfair to just let one person try and take in all that information and try and put it together. So thanks for volunteering, folks. Any other questions about strategic planning? We're good. So we have a little committee, Karen and Morgan and Colleen. So we were thinking we're going to try and do this in January. So I don't know if you're going to be doing spending a lot of time in December trying to get in touch with Volume 18. So is that fair to say? So it might be February before we get something?
That's a January or February, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Unless they pick us for one of their 12-day giveaways that they're promoting.
Yeah. That would be nice. Yeah. Okay. Video series. Right?
Yeah, I guess I'll start. I don't know. I think we're having a hard time with this, mostly just because, like money. If we're wanting, like nice professional videos, like we have all the topics, they all make sense, but it's just getting, we got $3,000 to deal with that, roughly breaks down $250 a video, and that's way too cheap. I wrote request at Film PI and got no response. So I don't think that we're going to be able to find like a professional video crew to come in and do it. Also, you know, for 30-second videos, like I don't really think that we can get a lot of, you know, like good content within just like a 30-second to 60-second video. You know, especially if we're wanting people to come on and like read a script. You know, these people aren't actors. You know, if we're wanting like farmers and producers to come on, you know, people within the community to come on and like have like a nice tight video that's informative about it. And I think that maybe we can sort of transition it more to a podcast potentially. And that would be like a fraction of the cost. We could still video the podcast, like video the actual conversation, and then we can find a snippet from the podcast to post on social media feeds, you know, to like drum up some good social media content for us. But I think that we can get a lot more out of the topics if we kind of switch the video series concept to a podcast series. We could even do it, like we could continue doing it monthly, but I think we could turn podcasts around a lot faster than that, maybe do it bi-weekly and potentially even weekly. I think then we can sit down with people and like we're not giving them a script to say, you're having a conversation with them. We can have like interview ones where we're like have like specific questions that we develop, but or, you know, just essentially have a conversation if we can find somebody, you know, like whether it's an elected official, whether it's an inspector, whether it's somebody that owns a restaurant, whether it's a farmer, whether it's a producer. I think we can just get a lot more value out of like a long form conversation than just like a 30-second video that's, you know, promoting some sort of concept that we want to promote within the food community. I don't know if you guys think that that's a better approach to this project, but I have experience with podcasts. I've had a podcast. I've been on multiple podcasts. You know, I went to college for radio broadcasting, so I know how to do all the editing and stuff like that. It's the video editing, you know, that's a whole totally different beast. And you know, I don't feel comfortable doing that. We don't have the money to pay somebody to do it to the degree that it would be like respectable and look good. Because I mean, like the video that we did there, you know, it was fine, but you know, I think we need something on a much higher caliber, you know, you know, coming out of the Food Council. I don't know if people think that that's a good idea or what, but that's what I'm thinking right now.
Right. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I say that totally reflects Megan's point from earlier. Like we want to produce really nice, high quality work, and that is going to take like professionals. And I love the idea of podcasts, but that's like, again, this is like kind of falling on your shoulders and your expertise. Like, what would be the time commitment for that type of thing?
Well, I think like we could. There's like the Guild has a sound studio, so we could probably rent some space there. And, you know, it's going to be like, you know, I'm thinking like 20 minutes podcasts where we can, you know, we can build off the topic list that we currently have. And, you know, but like we could have a podcast about the food asset map, you know, and bring in, you know, the people that were working on that, and then have a conversation about that. We can talk about like food sustainability. There's so many different topics that we can have. But I think in terms of time, it would be, just arranging a day, I'm assuming on the weekend, like a Saturday, and then just getting, four interview / conversations done in one day. You just kind of schedule one for, 10 o'clock, and then, you just have like an hour break there for your guest, have that conversation. And then there'll be maybe a little bit of sound editing that would need to be done. But I mean, compared to video editing, that's a fraction of the time. And then the video that we would have, it would just be like we just set up, like an iPhone on a tripod and just kind of film it, so there's no real editing needing to be done there. And then we can feed in the audio. I have like podcasting mics that we can use, or if we can use the mics within the studio space we rent. But I don't really see it being a huge time need from the people kind of organizing it. But I'm also thinking, if we're wanting to start it, like if we were to go with the video series, with all the COVID restrictions, who knows how long they're going to last. And, you're going to need at least a half a dozen people, whereas like a podcast, you just really need the two people. You just need the person who's, interviewing and the guest. And then I see it being a lot less time than a video series needed.
Brad, I think whatever happens sounds great to me. I think some of the things from what you're saying that I'm picking up on, how you're talking right now, and I don't think you were able to attend any of the sessions, so it's all good.
No.
But I think that's exactly what the interview portion was from the series. So maybe that's what we do. We instead just do a community conversation about food forever. I would probably not say weekly for your sake and everyone's sake. I think monthly would be like maximum.
Yeah.
I think you're maybe like me and you're like, yeah, I've got time. I thought, oh, it's just the webinar series, but like prepping to facilitate that interview, prepping to I had to do presentation. It took almost quadruple. Things take double the amount of time that I estimate for. And this time around, it took quadruple the amount of time. And I didn't, like I said, I didn't tabulate my hours for you, but I think there would be some eyebrow raises for sure. And I just wouldn't want you to have to do that. So I think that keeping that in mind, I think so those were the first two things I wanted to say. And then the third one was that I think the reason we wanted to do a video series was to capture people's attention. So if we could still do a 30-second clip with the theme, somehow, I think that's fine. But again, I think maybe we should define what the goal and purpose of the video series is, just to come back to that so that it's grounded. But I think if you went ahead with the podcast, it really would just sort of a community conversation about food forever is really what that would be. Because if you watch the recordings later, Brad, that's exactly what these 4 sessions were.
Yeah.
I think they were awesome, and I think that would be awesome. I think it's how to grab people's attention that don't sign on for those webinars or who aren't going to listen to a 20-minute food podcast, though, is what we also want to think about too. And then your time. Those were the 3 points I wanted to make. Bye.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't really clear on kind of the purpose of the video series either. It was just kind of we wanted to get it done. And then I think, just we were for lack of a better term, like a little naive on what actually goes into producing these videos. And so, I mean, like if we just wanted to do like quick little social media videos where, you know, we just like whip out a cell phone and do like a TikTok or whatever, you know, type thing, then that's one thing that's easy to do. But if we wanted, you know, with like graphics and proper editing, I just think that's a big endeavor, and it could be done if we had, you know, double the budget to be able to do it. But, you know, people are looking for like $700 to do one video. And, you know, like if we were doing like a 5 to 10 minute video, I think that would be worth it. But for a 30-second, like social media type video, I think that's kind of, you know, we're not using that budget all that well. But yeah, I mean, we could just essentially, because like a good thing with podcasts, especially when you're interviewing, you want to bank them. So we would rent studio space, try to get as many done in one day as possible. And then, you know, if we get 4 done, then we got, you know, if we want to do it monthly, then we don't have to revisit that for another 4 months. So like, I think from a time perspective, you know, it would just be like a weekend to try to get a batch done, and then, yeah, you know, and then spend a little bit of time editing it, and then we post it, and then bing, bang, boom, we're kind of done with them for the time being. But I think it would be a lot more effective, and we would just having that conversation with somebody instead of just doing like the 30-second video if we're going to be bringing guests in and stuff like that. So,
and I was just looking at the chat, and people were saying, you know, it was to get some education, and I was thinking of them as items that would gain some visibility. And I do kind of also wonder if like that could be part of when we look at the strategic planning, like how much effort do we put on various aspects? But I also think, you know, maybe we try a couple and see if they achieve that community engagement at all. Like, are people actually going to listen if there's links on the city's website or whatever? But before we get too far down the road of doing a whole, like banking a whole bunch of them, let's see if we are getting, I don't know if you can count hits on them or how any of that stuff works, but maybe that's a way to just pilot a couple and see if they have any effect, if they have that effect of the quick win that we were looking for.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think we will do the first 2-3 months at least, the quick video for 30 seconds one, and see how it works and how we are getting the feedbacks and all. I don't know, 20 minutes, it will be too long for the public to watch, and you know, they won't get much. You know, I don't think people will be watching 20 minutes video when we are posting, right?
Well, they wouldn't be watching it. It'd just be like an audio feed. So, and then we would put it on Apple Podcasts and, you know, like Spotify or something like that. So people would listen to it on their commute and stuff like that. I mean, I listen to podcasts all day, you know, and like it is, it's a huge format that's very, very popular. And, you know, and I think there's a lot of people that we can talk to on the island about it. And, you know, there's a lot of different issues that we can get into, you know, like they just found potato wart on the island, you know, that we can have a conversation with somebody from CFIA about the ramifications of, you know, things like that. We can talk about, you know, how climate change is going to, you know, alter agriculture on the island. You know, we can get into some in-depth topics, and then, you know, just have interesting conversations with people on the island regarding food. But yeah, I mean, think it'll be the same amount of work as a video series that'll cost a fraction of, you know, getting 12 professionally done videos done. And if we just had that, you know, podcast series and yeah, like there's like studio space that we can rent, the Guild and a few other places, I guess, but I don't know. It's just a thought, but I think like the video series is just, I just don't really know like the kind of point of it and what we're really trying to accomplish with it. So.
I just want to weigh in on a few things city related, always to be the party pooper. So I think it's a really cool idea. And I think kind of what I'm hearing is that it's just sort of two different things. Like, I think, like Megan said, a continuation of the community conversation sounds amazing. Those conversations were so valuable. And I totally see what you were saying, Brad, in that they provide additional value to a short video, but I think they accomplish two really different things that might both be valuable. But kind of, I guess what I'm thinking is that we asked the standing committee for that money towards a video series. And I know that a podcast series doesn't seem that different. But it kind of is, especially when we start talking about getting it somewhere like Spotify and Apple podcasts, just in terms of it's like essentially the city's starting a podcast, which is kind of cool. But I guess what I'm just saying is I don't feel comfortable without having at least a conversation with Ramona, if you do decide to do that. Okay. As to whether or not like we need to take it back to committee. I guess that's just sort of a starting point on that, just to sort of be upfront with that.
Yeah.
And then in terms of like video quality too, I just sort of wanted to make a clarification in that I guess we talked about kind of like, I feel like they just sort of like went down a bit of a rabbit hole with the professional videographers. Like, I think this conversation kind of started out of like comms, our communications department had some feedback on the first video in terms of like improving the quality of it. And then we talked about like getting students, which I think we all thought was like a good sort of in between, which just didn't pan out. It wasn't possible. And then we took that step towards professional videographers, which seems like it would be out of the price range. And but I don't think that we necessarily need a professional quality. Like you mentioned something like a TikTok video, which I think is potentially fine if that's something that there's an interest in with the council. I think the biggest thing with the quality thing was just like there was some jumpiness and stuff to the first video. So I think a big part of it is trying to say like get it in one take. And then the one limitation in terms of say a TikTok style video is just that it would have to have the logos. So there's just, those are the sort of city related.
Yeah, but like the problem is like, yeah, you know, giving somebody a script and they're not an actor, they're not professional people doing this, like it's very difficult, you know, and it's like, yeah, I just think they were like, the original concept was social media videos, which is just, yeah, like essentially little TikTok videos, but, you know, and then it blew up, yeah, into, you know, these like big professional videos, and it just kind of like snowballed away, and I kind of lost the concept of what we were originally trying to do. And I feel like the concept is just having, you know, like promoting, like these, like the topics that we identified. And I just feel that it would be better just to have these conversations about the topics as opposed to just a like 30-second video. I don't know. I mean, it's like we can continue doing with the video series. Like we're not going to get for the budget that we have. It's going to be, you know, just essentially the same things of the last videos that we did. If we don't hire, you know, people and try to get more money, or cut down the videos and then use the $3,000 that we have to make 6 videos as opposed to 12 videos. You know, there's that approach, but yeah.
Brad, I'm just going to chime in. In the chat room, there's a lot of agreement on identifying the goals and objectives of why we're doing this. I'm wondering if we circle back around to that. Would that be helpful?
Yeah.
In leading us down a path of, do we do TikTok or the other podcasts? Maybe that'll help in our discussion if we take 5 or 10 minutes to. I'm looking at the time where it's almost 7 o'clock. Do we want to do that as a group?
Sure.
And I think I wrote that in the chat box just to chime in there. I think because I can totally picture, because having just gone through this series, I was fortunate to have like the objectives and goals that we had identified way back in January for that. So I could totally picture how you and Sheena might be drowning a little bit in the circles that we talk in. But I think this spurred, from my recollection, from a conversation. People were looking for action, like output. And I think that's something that the council has always really struggled that balance with. So they were looking for output. And this sort of came up as, well, why don't we do like a little educational series as something that's like an easy output, but it's clearly not like an easy little output.
No.
So I think that's pretty much what I had put there. And then just also conscious of who participated in the sessions that we put on recently. It was either through like personal connections of the panelists, personal connections of us, or people who show up to everything food related, like the Paulines and the Davids. They're going to come and they're going to talk and they're going to listen to everything. So they would listen to a 20-minute podcast every day. There's no doubt about that. But it's like, how do we capture the people that are not there? And like, how do we like expand that to people that we want to engage in these conversations? And
That was my
yeah, Sheena. Yeah. And I think that's why it was like the social media piece. I'm happy with either. In terms of the podcast, I would, if you were to go ahead with conversations like that, just because of all the work that I put into a conversation series, I would really appreciate it if it was labeled in the same way. If that's something that we move forward as a council, that it's sort of labeled as community conversations about food, because that's sort of what you're describing. I just think it would maybe be confusing for community if it was like, okay, we just did this thing and now it's this thing and that, if you know what I mean. But I think that clarifies the initial thinking about this. We sort of were like, we have all these ideas, what's some like quick action that we can do? And someone had suggested educational things. I think we were initially talking about, donating to charities, even of organizations, but we landed on like an educational series, but I don't think we ever like defined the scope of that for you, Sheena and Brad.
Yeah, because it's really hard to educate people with a 30-second video. So if we're looking to educate people on specific topics, then yeah, like having community conversations, but to have a community conversation, like the community conversations are great because it allows the community to converse. But this, I see it different than the community conversations, because the podcast is not allowing everyone to converse. It's the host and the subject that are having the conversation. So it's not a community conversation. It's a show that's based around food, that's specific to the island, and then we talk to people that are doing things with food on the island. And then so the educational component is, from that conversation.
Yep, and I completely understand that. I think what I'm saying though is 20 to 40 minutes of the hour of the 4 sessions that I did were exactly what you're saying, just on Zoom. It was an interview with anywhere between 2 to 4 panelists. And so that's just what I'm saying is that I'm not saying community comes on and chimes in. I was pursuing 2 to 4 panelists for 20 to 40 minutes.
Yes, yeah.
I just wanted to point out what Colleen put in the chat box. Colleen, do you want to speak to it, or I just think it's a great idea.
Just the way the conversation was going, and I only attended one of the sessions, but the presentations were pretty excellent, and I just wondered if we could like go through those and come up with the short clips in whether it's video or whether it's audio only, but like there's such good content just there. I guess we'd have to get permission, but rather than starting from scratch, try and reuse those in a different kind of format that's kind of the quick bites, was my thought.
We already have them recorded and we just have to go through them and see how we are using them. Yeah. But we don't have to worry about permission. There was a disclaimer at the beginning of every session.
Okay. Yeah. But I have to wonder if that's a way of kind of doing a video series that's educational. It's not as topical as what was planned, but there was like some really good info. I don't know.
Yeah, I just think because you could take the money, it's just a thought, but you could take the money and have like identify the sort of areas you want to pull out and potentially have an editor, if one could be found, pull out those chunks and kind of just.
And that's fine. I think that's related to Jackie and I finished tying that work up. I think like we still need to help Brad and Sheena on what the goals are for that series, which is separate.
This is a tough conversation, isn't it? There's a lot.
But yeah, I mean, I just don't know what the purpose of the videos are for. It just seems like people want videos because people like TV. Like it's like, what's the point? I don't really see the point of it. We identified a bunch of topics, and they're great topics, but the topics that are there, are broader than just a 30-second video. So if we're wanting to go with the topics that we've picked, then I just don't see how we're going to do justice to like a video series with $3,000, which I like sent that out to Film PI and didn't get any response. And even Renee at Film PI said, this is way too low. Like, you're not going to get anyone responding to this. So it's yeah. But like taking clips from those community conversations, and if we can find some poignant little snippets that somebody said, then that makes sense. It doesn't go with the topics that we've developed for the video series per se. I mean, we may be able to fit some of them in, but yeah, that would be, and then, we're posting those online or YouTube or whatever that it would be, so people can check them out there. But yeah, maybe that's one step for the video series, is that we just continue doing community conversations, and then just take little snippets from that, and then that helps promote the community conversations, as well as creating this sort of educational plan to deal with the video series project. So
there's another comment in the chat room.
Yeah, it was.
It's, I think it's very, very wise. Megan, do you want to, since it's your comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Brad, I think I completely feel for what you're saying right now, and I agree with everything you're saying. I think that this initial conversation started because I think we were anxious. We hadn't done anything in a while because of COVID, and it was like, how can we get action done? But I don't think we've been fair to you and Sheena in that we haven't provided you scope or goals, and it's sort of like been circles of conversations. We've got this series that just happened, and I really love everything you're saying, but is it something that you both would want to consider and counsel to maybe table it until we've done our strategic planning? I feel like we've gotten a lot of really good action in the last Like, I know it was just a 2-week series, but I feel like as a food council in the time of COVID, we've done quite a bit of action.
Mhm.
So we can feel okay about that. And I think that's why people felt like we needed the series. But I also don't want to like say, I know that you have both done quite a bit of work in research and in that first video already. So would want to hear what you would have to say there, if you'd want to table it, and then others.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine with tabling the video series, until the strategic plan is out, and then we kind of, identify specifically what actions that we're wanting. But yeah, I think if because I'm assuming we're planning on, because the community conversations, that was like a success. So I'm assuming we're going to continue doing that. So maybe my time can be, better used in helping to beef that up, and relieve some pressure from, Megan and on that project. I don't know. Are we planning? Like, I'm assuming we're planning on doing more community conversations.
But I don't think that's been decided yet. We're not sure,
No,
but
no.
it's, yeah. Maybe out of the strategic plan will come more of those ideas on how and where we want to focus our efforts.
Yeah.
I hope.
Because if the community conversations are going to be pretty much just people talking, then yeah, that is a podcast, and then we could essentially just post audio files of that onto, because there's no difference in posting a video on YouTube and posting an audio file on Spotify. So in terms of like, dealing, like, posting content on the internet, or so yeah, maybe within the strategic plan, we just identify having more community conversations. And then once, COVID's gone and we can actually get people in the same room and stuff like that, then, these community conversations can be kind of like, the scope can be changed on them as being active conversations. And then showcase are doing specific things on the island that we think as a council is and impactful, then we can have another avenue, which may be a podcast or, whatever it may be, to kind of focus that and identify the interesting things that are happening on the island. And, things need to change with climate change, things need to change with, different markets and stuff like that. So, because I mean, like, I think a big topic is going to be, how is agriculture going to change on the island with climate change? I think that's an interesting conversation within the community conversation project. Because potatoes aren't going to be the thing. So.
As for this 3 months project, I have contacted Professor Jennifer at UPI, and the student is interested. Samantha Duque, she contacted me yesterday, and she said she is willing to participate in our video series. And people are there. Even Kelly, environmental health inspector Kelly, she said that this week it's a little bit hard for for everyone anyway, with the COVID thing. So, but she said she will be interested too. So people are there.
That's awesome. I work with Kelly. Cool.
Oh, is it? Oh, she's really nice. Yeah.
Okay. Is it fair to say then, I think we're okay to table this until we do the strategic planning and see how we can fold that into it? Is that okay? Thanks for the work that's been done so far. It wasn't just a sit down 1 hour, research, reaching out to people, talking to them, emails, meeting with people. So thank you for all that work. We hope that we can build upon that in the new year and still keep doing something.
Do you want me to send email that we don't want to do it? I said that in January we will do it. So what should I say to them?
It might be fair to say we've put it on hold until the council has a greater discussion on it. Yeah. I had someone do a TikTok thing on the market. I'd never seen TikTok. I didn't know what it was. And I was like, wow, it seemed easy. He just walked around and filmed himself in a shelf here and there. And it was very educational. And it lasted, I don't know, 30 seconds. It was impressive. Okay. Is there a new business? Anybody want to bring anything up, wanted to add? We didn't. From the conversations that we've had, I know we accepted the agenda at the beginning, but sometimes conversations bring up new items. Now would be the time if you want to bring something up. Just a tired group. Well, with that, thanks everyone for joining us on web. And probably a lot of you have been on webs weekly, and it's getting a little tiresome. So thanks for engaging. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting? Colleen, and second by Brad.
Yeah.
And okay, so we're all. So well, stay safe, folks, and hopefully we keep getting good news about COVID-19, and we can all celebrate Christmas with our loved ones. I think January, are we still sticking with Wednesdays? Because this was a new date, right? We did Thursday because the council was meeting, the city council.
I think that the choice was to move it up just because to keep it further away from Christmas.